Look down at your hands for a second. Go ahead. Actually look at them. Those hands have typed on keyboards, scrolled through feeds, tapped glass screens thousands of times today. And yet buried inside them, in the tendons, the bones, the very architecture of your palm, is a body that is still changing, still being shaped, still evolving right now. While you read this, while you breathe, you probably learned in school that evolution is something that happened, past tense, something that turned apes into people millions of years ago and then quietly stopped, like a project that got finished. But that is not what evolution is. That is not how it works. And the evidence that it is still happening, actively, measurably inside the human population right now, is more unsettling than you have been told. Here is what evolution actually is. It is not a destination. It is a pressure. It is the universe quietly sorting through the variation in a population, generation after generation, and nudging things in whatever direction gives certain individuals a slightly better shot at having children who survive. That is it. That is the whole engine. And that engine has never stopped running. So what does it look like when it runs on you? In 2017, a team of researchers at Columbia University published a study in the journal PLOS Biology. They analyzed genomic data from over 60,000 people and looked for signatures of natural selection in the modern human genome. What they found stopped a lot of people in the field. Variants linked to late-onset Alzheimer's disease and high cholesterol were being quietly removed from the population, not through medicine, not through choice, through selection pressure. People carrying certain versions of those genes were, on average, having slightly fewer surviving children, and over time those variants were becoming less common. Evolution was happening in real time, in a Western population, in the 21st century. But it goes much deeper than disease resistance. Your skeleton is different from your great-great-grandmother's. Not dramatically, but measurably. Researchers studying skeletal remains across centuries have documented a shift in jaw size across multiple human populations. As food became softer, cooked, processed, easier to chew, the selective pressure to grow a large, robust jaw relaxed. Over generations, jaws got smaller, but the number of teeth did not change as fast, which is why so many people today have wisdom teeth that do not fit. Your mouth is a mismatch. Part ancient, part modern, a relic of a jaw that used to be bigger, and a tooth count that has not caught up yet. You are living in the middle of an evolutionary lag. This is one of the most disorienting things about understanding evolution. The body you have right now is not optimized for your life. It is optimized, imperfectly, partially, with a million compromises for the lives of your ancestors, specifically for the conditions that killed them or helped them survive long enough to have children. Your immune system was shaped by pathogens that no longer exist. Your hunger drives were calibrated for scarcity that most of you never experience. Your stress response was built for a world where the threat was something with teeth, not a notification. And yet, new pressures are selecting new traits right now. Consider lactase persistence, the ability to digest milk into adulthood. For most of human evolutionary history, the gene that produces lactase, the enzyme that breaks down lactose, switched off after weaning. That was the ancestral state. Then, roughly 10,000 years ago, some human populations began keeping cattle. Suddenly, there was a rich, calorie-dense food source available, but only to people who could digest it. Those who carried a mutation that kept lactase production running into adulthood had a meaningful nutritional advantage. They survived in greater numbers. They had more children. And today, roughly 35% of the global human population carries that mutation. The rest are lactose intolerant. Not because something went wrong, but because that was the original default setting. That is 10,000 years. That is a blink in evolutionary time. And it rewrote the digestive systems of a third of the planet. Now ask yourself, what is being rewritten right now in response to the world you are living in? Dr. Stephen Stearns at Yale University has spent decades studying this question. His research team analyzed data from the Framingham Heart Study, a multi-generational health study tracking thousands of people in Massachusetts since 1948. When they looked at which traits correlated with having more surviving children, they found something striking. Women who were slightly shorter, slightly heavier, who had lower blood pressure and lower cholesterol, were having more children on average. If those patterns hold, and there is no reason to think they will not, Stearns models project that the descendants of the Framingham population, thousands of years from now, will be measurably shorter and heavier than people alive today. Not worse, not better, just different. That is the part that takes a moment to land. Evolution has no preference, it has no goal, there is no direction it is trying to go. It is just pressure and time and survival and reproduction, and right now in modern Western populations, the pressure has shifted. It is no longer primarily about surviving predators or finding food, it is subtler. It is about age at first reproduction. It is about chronic disease and who survives long enough to have grandchildren. It is about which variants happen to correlate, however weakly, with leaving a lineage. And then there is something that makes this stranger still. In 2016, researchers studying populations in sub-Saharan Africa found a genetic variant, a segment of ancient Neanderthal or Denisovan DNA, that had been positively selected for in certain groups, meaning it was being kept in the population because it was useful. Ancient DNA. DNA from a species that went extinct 30,000 years ago. Still active. Still being selected for. Still shaping your cousins on the other side of the planet. You did not evolve from Neanderthals, but some of your DNA, and theirs, is still negotiating a deal. Here is what all of this means when you pull it back to your own life. That palmaris longus muscle in your wrist, the one you can see pop up when you press your thumb and pinky together, is present in about 85% of humans. The other 15% were born without it. It used to help your ancestors grip branches. It is now vestigial, essentially useless, and it is slowly disappearing from the population as the selection pressure to keep it fades over thousands of generations. Your body is a museum of pressures that no longer exist, and a construction site for pressures you cannot yet see. The aching lower back you feel after sitting all day, the anxiety that spikes when you check your email, the craving for sugar and fat that modern food companies exploit so effortlessly. None of these are malfunctions. They are adaptations running in the wrong era. Features, not bugs, in a world they were not built for. But evolution does not know that. It just keeps running the numbers, keeps watching who survives, keeps watching who reproduces, keeps making tiny, invisible adjustments across millions of people and hundreds of generations. The philosopher Daniel Dennett called evolution a blind watchmaker, a process with no mind, no foresight, no plan, assembling extraordinarily complex things through nothing but time and selection. And you are one of those things, assembled by that process, still being assembled by it. There is something both humbling and clarifying about that. When you look at your hands now, those hands that type and scroll and tap, you are not looking at a finished product. You are looking at a draft, a very long, very slow draft written by 4 billion years of pressure and survival and reproduction. And somewhere in the variation that exists between you and the 7 billion other humans alive right now, selection is quietly circling things, keeping some, letting others fade. You are not the end of the story. You are a sentence in the middle of it. And the story is still being written. Right now, while you breathe, while you read, while your body does everything it was shaped, imperfectly and beautifully, to do. Look down at your hands again. Now you know what you are actually looking at.